In about a half hour, FBI Director James Comey and the Director of the National Security Agency, Mike Rogers, will testify on Capitol Hill. Director Comey could reveal what the FBI has learned about Russian interference in the presidential election. The FBI Director is also expected to be asked about President Trump's still unproven claim that former President Obama wiretapped him. This morning, the president took to Twitter, writing, quote, "The Democrats made up and pushed the Russian story as an excuse for running a terrible campaign. Big advantage in Electoral College and lost." Well, the ranking Democrat on the Intelligence Committee, Congressman Adam Schiff, then responded to that tweet, writing, quote, "Mr. President, the Russians hacked our election and interfered. No one disputes this now but you. This is what is called fact." He went on to say, "As you will see during our hearing, Mr. President, there is no evidence Mr. Obama tapped your phones. This is what is called fiction."
Twitter war of words going on this morning. Let's bring in White House reporter for Time, Zeke Miller, joining us now from Washington. Zeke, let's just sort of break this down. Let's begin with the president's tweets this morning. First, he said the Democrats were the ones that made up the Russia story. Then he said the real story here is the leaking of classified info. Earlier, Congressman Adam Schiff told CBS This Morning that it was all an attempt to distract. What do you make of it?
So, like everything else in Washington, there's always a bit of a grain of truth in all of these political attacks. Yes, Democrats are pointing to Russia as a sort of an excuse for why they lost the election on November 8th. You know, they were shocked by the outcome and pointing to that sort of maybe sort of an easy boogeyman. At the same time, every intelligence agency, all 16 of the intelligence committee signed off on this. Bipartisan lawmakers agree that Russia interfered in the election, hacking in the DNC emails, John Podesta's emails, and leaking them. The question is, and the open one, and that's really what this hearing is about, is just how far beyond that did it go? Were there any substantial contacts between the Trump campaign and the Russian government or their allies or the intelligence services that were untoward in any way? That's really what this is all about. And so this is all a bit of semantics where Donald Trump is saying all of the Russia stuff is made up, which is not true. And the Democrats are saying that, that the entire election was hacked, which is also not fully substantiated at this point.
Zeke, this could have all been wrapped up if the president had just days ago or soon after said, look, this was something that I saw on television or I heard from an alternative media source. But right now, if Director Comey comes out today and says flat out that there was no wiretapping of the Trump campaign by President Obama, what will be the impact? And in your estimation, having now covered President Trump ever since he was candidate Trump, do you think that he'll be forced to ultimately backtrack? Doesn't seem to be in his DNA, but perhaps this might be a case where he might have to.
Yeah, we really haven't seen him put in a box quite like this. If the director comes out and does say that, which would be a very substantial statement by the director of the FBI, who does work for the president after all, it would be, it really would put the president in a really tough spot where now his own employees are saying what he's saying isn't true. Will he ever backtrack, or will, what we've seen from him over the course of the campaign now at the White House is he tries to deflect and point to something else, or tries to find a way to claim some symbolic victory on some very small piece. But it is an open question whether the director of the FBI will get into that level of specificity, because just of how sensitive anything involving wiretap surveillance warrants are, and also that there is a chance that there is something attached to someone close, maybe not necessarily the Trump campaign, but somebody Trump adjacent who's the subject of some sort of wiretap, that he might not be able to make some sort of categorical denial that Democrats are looking for, that will give Trump just a little thread to hold it, to hold on to.
Something else the president brought up, that the Brits may be involved in this wiretapping thing. The administration is certainly not backing down after recently cited unsubstantiated reports claiming that British intelligence may have helped President Obama tap Trump Tower. So the British quickly dismissed this claim right away, and Congressman Will Hurt has actually called on the president to apologize. But I'm wondering, it already seems like the expiration date on this issue is nearing very quickly with everything else going on. People may be losing interest, but is there potential impact if the president doesn't apologize?
There certainly is in terms of the trust between the U.S. and the U.K. The British government is traditionally, it's a special relationship, one of the America's closest allies, and a high degree of trust between the two governments' leaderships is essential to carrying out a whole range of foreign policy issues. Everything from the ongoing negotiations surrounding Brexit to policy ISIS or sort of geopolitical strategy involving Russia. All of these things, require a bit of trust, and certainly there's a lack of that coming out of the White House Thursday and Friday as Sean Spicer, and then the president sort of alluded to repeating those allegations that were very strenuously denied by the British government. The British government, received the White House's, sort of assurances Friday morning that they wouldn't repeat them again. And the president sort of alluded to them later that afternoon. He sort of joked about it, saying he got it from Fox. That's a problem for the British government. It might not be such a big problem here. It might not be a big issue here domestically, given all the things going on. But certainly, they're paying a lot of close attention to that over in the UK right now.
Well, and that was going to be my question to you, Zeke. Not only with our close allies, that special relationship that we have with the United Kingdom, but also with Germany and the claims made at the podium there, standing next to German Chancellor Angela Merkel. The look on her face, which has been shared on social media and across all of media ever since it happened, the look on her face of disbelief, of shock. And I wonder, as you point out, Zeke, this may not have huge implications for folks here in the United States, but I wonder just in the meetings that the president and the diplomats that are responsible for keeping these relationships intact are going to be sort of on their back foot here when it comes to dealing with these nations behind closed doors, perhaps when even the president isn't there. Will there be a sense from our allies and their leaders that in some instances this president may not be taken as seriously as he should be?
That's really the million-dollar question right now going forward. Some of these early meetings with foreign leaders haven't gone nearly as well as even the White House was hoping for. Certainly bringing up wiretapping next in sort of a joking form next to Angela Merkel, who was surveilled by the East German secret police, and for whom that's a very personal issue, was actually surveilled by the U.S. government, forcing President Obama to issue a very strong, essentially awkward apology, and that really did set the U.S.-German relationship back by a couple of years, 5 years ago or so, after the Snowden revelations. So it does put them, it does raise questions about the president's credibility around the globe when it comes to, again, everything from ISIS policy to China, Russia, all those big issues where you need to marshal a lot of governments together to get big problems solved. It requires a bit of trust. And right now, around the globe, if the trust is formed based on those early meetings and they're sort of built upon like blocks, and right now that foundation is very shaky, and that's going to be a problem for this president and also for the people of this country if it's not corrected. Certainly, in the next couple of months going forward.
Right. So Zeke, the other big event starting today is day one of the confirmation hearings for Neil Gorsuch, which is the president's Supreme Court nominee. What can we expect?
He's widely expected to sail through the Senate around Washington. He seems to be the right pick for the right time, sort of a not necessarily moderate, but a mainstream Republican. If for a lot of Democrats, they sort of divide the things a normal Republican president would do and the things that President Trump will do. And he's a sort of normal Republican pick, so they can make do with him, particularly for the seat, that's been vacant since the death of Antonin Scalia, a conservative line on the court. One of the big things Democrats are going to try to do is point out Gorsuch's opinions and sort of concurrent opinions of the last couple of years, particularly one called to the Chevron, his opinion trying to undo the Chevron doctrine, which would give the federal courts a lot more leeway to insert themselves into the regulatory process, which is something that both the White House and Republicans have been trying to do for years. That would be is sort of allowing individual people to sue on regulations like the EPA, regulatory agencies like the EPA, and the like, giving the courts a lot more jurisdiction over federal bureaucrats. That's something that conservatives really want, something that liberals in the Senate won't be so happy about. But that probably won't derail his, assuming he plays it safe like most Supreme Court nominees do, he should be fine at the end of the week.
Zeke, the nomination of Judge Gorsuch and the hearings that will be held today and tomorrow, I mean, that's a slam dunk for the President of the United States as far as fulfilling one of his campaign promises. He, just this past week, has gone out to conservative Republicans and sort of cajoled them and negotiated with them, which is what he is known for, to come around to the health care plan. If you're one of his supporters, is that what is most important to you, getting the things that he promised on the campaign trail done? Or, because the president is tweeting about things that people generally don't care about unless you're in the Beltway or you're in the media.
He's not tweeting about jobs. He's not tweeting about health care.
I mean, if he is, they're usually not. I mean, you can tell the difference when there's a tweet that is coming directly from the president and one that's sort of been massaged for him. And I'm just wondering, are his supporters happy that he's doing this and he's, tweeting like he has been this morning, or do they want to hear more substantial information from him?
talked to a lot of Trump supporters over the last couple of months. I was at his first campaign rally in Florida, 3-4 weeks ago, and the message from all of them was, give him a chance and also watch what he does, not what he says. And they've always been far more tolerant of the things that he tweets than the folks in the Beltway, certainly, and certainly Democrats. It'll be interesting to watch how they, can he actually deliver on health care this week? Can Speaker Ryan get the health care bill out of the House on Thursday as planned? If that happens, it could end up being a very strong week for President Trump. The question is, he is a penchant for taking strong weeks and then shooting himself in the foot. Something like the wiretapping. We saw that all throughout the campaign. He for some reason, he couldn't accept a victory. He would always find a way to undermine himself. If that pattern continues, then he might not get the same bump that he could if he sort of coasts through the week, which should be a very strong week for him, and see his approval ratings rise just a bit.
We'll have to see how it plays out. Zeke Miller, as always, we thank you, my friend. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.